Welcome here, everybody. It is Thursday. We're kind of pretending like it's a Friday today. Glad to see everybody's faces. We've got a big number of you today. Probably our biggest Clear Head, Strong Mind audience yet. If you guys want to use the chat box, just let us know where you're from, what city you're joining us from. Anything else you want to tell us about your week? Maybe tell us about what was a win this week. Hopefully everybody had a really productive and great week. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. Feel free to introduce yourself along the way.
Yeah, Dustin, last I checked, I think over 200 registered for this, which is always great to see. And yes, it's a holiday week, or we're sandwiched between Canada Day and Independence Day. So for those of you that have decided not to take an extra long weekend in the US,
thank you.
Thank you for showing up.
That's great. Texas. All this Texas.
I want to know how hot it is in Phoenix or Texas. God bless. It's hot, yeah. Hey, Alicia.
102 in Vegas today. Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
102. Holy moly. Hey, Michelle. Welcome back. A lot of names I don't recognize. I love it. Welcome, everybody.
The chat turned into a weather forecast. I like it.
Yeah.
Can we get these in?
Yeah. Can we get it in a metric system, like Celsius conversion? I just know 102 sounds really hot.
That is hot. If you're just joining us, we're just taking a minute to introduce ourselves in the chat. Thank you for taking time out of your Thursday. I know it's a holiday starting, for most of you, probably starting a bit today, but in the US, holidays tomorrow, or Saturday is, yeah.
Haven't seen Karen's name from Vancouver in a while. Karen, great to see you. Thanks for being here. I hear it's rainy in Vancouver right now. Alex from our ILEA International Executive Committee and Board of Governors. Thanks for being here too. We have Angela, which means we could get started, but let's give it a couple minutes and wave hello to everybody that hasn't had the chance to meet you yet. We'll introduce you shortly. 32.8 Celsius. Okay, yeah. So Mary Ellen, you're rocking the hot summer weather.
That's hot to us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we're going to get some stragglers along the way, but let's get started. And yeah. we've got a great hour ahead of us. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Lisa Marks, Board of Governors, and the keeper of all things Clear Head, Strong Minds, and she's going to get us kicked off. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, Amy, for getting this all started. We are recording this session as we always do, so that you can go back and watch the content after, or we can share with other community members who weren't able to be here. So as Dustin said, my name is Lisa Marks. I'm one of your ILEA International Board of Governors, dialing in today from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Kind of overcast. We've had torrential rain a couple of days ago, and yesterday was Canada Day. So we attempted to take the day off and had a physically distant backyard, no hugging barbecue. It was really fun. Certainly making the best of what we can do here. But it's my pleasure to once again host Clear Head, Strong Mind with my colleague Dustin and Angela Braun, who I'll introduce in a second. So thanks to those of you that chose to be here. We had hundreds of people register for this, and then I think partway through registration open, we realized, oh, this is a big holiday week. So it's not surprising that some people have taken off for an extra long weekend, but we're so excited that you are all here with us today. As Dustin said, we have a great conversation. Angela's going to walk us through something called the Be.Do.Have model, and I won't even attempt to watch what that's all about because I'm here to learn as well. But so Angela will jump in just a second. Wanted to say a huge thank you to those of you that are ILEA International members in whatever chapter you belong to. I know just yesterday we started a new membership year, which means, you know, we've got some exciting things ahead of us. We've also got, I think, some incredible hard work to do in our own communities, in our own businesses, in our own careers, in our own personal lives. I think we're just at the base of a big mountain, but isn't it true that, you know, going through something like this is made so much easier through community? It has to be true. And whatever that means for you, you know, we just, on behalf of ILEA, want to say thank you so much to our community members. Without all of you choosing to reinvest in yourselves and invest in the industry and invest in ILEA, we really can't facilitate conversations like this. And I would venture a guess that anyone that's been a part of Clear Head Strong Mind or any of our webinars in the past really walk away with at least a small handful of nuggets that you can take and analyze against your own lives and then implement right away. And ultimately, the purpose of these, when we designed it with Angela, was want you all to walk away with some powerful new toolkit. Like, we're going into the world that is completely different than what we knew before pre-COVID. And so if you walk away with a new toolkit that will ultimately set you up for success, then we feel like we've won. So on behalf of the organization, thank you to the members for enabling us to do just that. I know that the world is tense right now. In many cases, it feels like it's upside down. And that, that doesn't stop because we're here today, but it is our job to facilitate community, and it's our job to put content out in the world that gives you something that you can take back to your lives and ultimately feel good about. So we are going to keep these conversations going. So you will continue to see invitations in your inbox about webinars being hosted by ILEA International. You'll continue to see Clear Head Strong Mind webinars through July. And so we hope you come join us and take a little break away from whatever the day or the week looks like for you. So, so stay tuned for more content coming up, and please also watch your inbox for more information about how we're getting engaged in the conversation around diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. I know that plays a big role in everyone's lives and also our own mindsets. So we wanted to mention that here. Watch your inbox for a survey if you haven't already seen it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can get involved in that conversation and better represent you. And stay tuned for how to get involved. So it is, we've got a, I always say this when we have an artist come join us for the end of the session, we have a big surprise for you. We actually have something really delightful that's going to end our session today. It is musical. I encourage you to stay until the end. I promise to get you off of here before the top of the hour, so we will not run long. But we have an amazing talent joining us today, singing a song that I think that speaks really clearly to what's going on in the times right now. So if you need a little musical interlude in your life, I invite you to stay until the end. And so with all of that I'm really just here to facilitate. It is my hope that you get everything out of this that you want from our amazing partner in Angela Braun, certified performance coach. So I'm going to stop talking and invite Angela to start. Today we are talking about the Be.Do.Have model. And so it is my pleasure to introduce my longtime friend and the partner to the organization, Angela Braun. If you haven't met Angela before, you probably won't know that Angela is a certified leadership and personal performance coach. She has an extensive background in the events and hospitality industry, including ILEA leadership. She has over 20 years of experience inside of a large corporation in various roles, specifically in aviation and hospitality, and now runs her international coaching practice also out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You can check her out at angelanicolecoaching.com or Angela Braun on social. And so Angela brings this beautiful blend of corporate know-how and best practices and some really important processes to implement into your business and into your lives, and this beautiful empathy of what it is to be a human and really be successful and thrive. So Angela, thank you for being here as always. I know you've got an awesome conversation for us today. As always, guys, drop your comments and thoughts into the chat. I know it's very public, but that's okay. It's a safe group here. We will pull threads out of that and give ourselves a chance to have a Q&A with Angela later in the session. So if you have questions or any comments, drop them in there. And Angela, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Dustin. And thank you to all of you guys. I really look forward to Thursdays and getting to hang out with all of you. And I do recognize that this is a long weekend. And so with Canada Day yesterday and Independence Day on Saturday, there's a lot of you that really want to spend time with your family and friends, as you should. So the fact that you took out the time to come hang out with us for an hour is really meaningful to me. So thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I look forward. I put it on the full, I don't know, it's the non-speaker view. Is it the layout view, Dustin? Yeah, I put it on because I just want to see all of your faces, because it actually makes me really happy to see them all here. So, all right. So for those of you who were hanging out with us 2 weeks ago, we talked about vision, and we talked about how and why vision matters now more than ever. And so really what we were looking at is, what is the desired end state? Like, what is it ultimately that we look to have in life? And so we talked about that end state being the direction in which we want to go. And we talked about how strategy professionally or goal setting personally is the how we are going to get there. Now, I mean, obviously those things are really important, but the missing ingredient, in my opinion, is the person you will need to become to see that vision turn into a reality. Once we are really clear about what we want and why we want it, the game-changing question isn't what do I need to do now? It actually is who do I need to become? And so today we're going to talk about the Be.Do.Have model, what it is, why it's important, the process and how to go through that, and also the correlation between the Be.Do.Have model and personal branding. So I always like to tell you guys some personal stories, but when I first heard about the Be.Do.Have model, it was actually really mind-blowing to me. I friggin' loved it. I thought it was super amazing, and it also was really vague, really scary, really uncertain, and really uncomfortable. And so in that moment, like for those of you who don't know me, and some of you do, some of you I've known for a number of years, and some of you I just simply haven't had the opportunity to meet quite yet. But if you had known me 5 years ago, and I know I'm going to get some nods on this, I was all like, data. Show me the data. I want the business case to prove the model. What is the cost modeling? Have you done your benchmarking? Like everything was that way for me. Now, for the record, I still think that's really important. But at that moment, when I was first learning about the Be.Do.Have model, you know, in its vagueness and uncertainty, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later, I decided to give it a go. And here's what I'll share with you. At that time in my corporate space, I knew what the next phase was going to look like. I knew where I wanted to go. And the moment that I knew where I wanted to go, I knew that I had to be that person today in order to get to where I needed to go. I needed to adopt that right now. And here's what I'll share with you. In that moment in time when I was in corporate, I was getting a promotion every year and a half. Why? Not because I'm necessarily smart. That had nothing to do with it. I actually showed up in a different way. And so even when we take a look at that, and I do a lot of this with my clients as well, and in coaching, you really kind of take a look at that, you know, state of where you are and then get really clear on where you want to be. And it's that conscious gap that can feel really yucky, right? And where I say it gets really uncomfortable is because that conscious gap of where we, you know, intentionally want to go is where imposter syndrome shows up. And imposter syndrome, she is not fun, right? Like she is all about, you're not good enough. Who are you to think that you could have this? This isn't possible for you. What would people think? What if people find out I'm a fraud? All of that kind of stuff. So when I talk about the Be.Do.Have model being really, really powerful, I often say it's so simple. It's so beautiful in its simplicity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, and it can get really uncomfortable. But on the other side of uncomfortable, when we choose to go through that to the other side, can be exceptionally powerful. So in all of that preface, what is the Be.Do.Have model? Now I'm going to read some of this because I actually really like it, and sometimes I get verbal diarrhea and I don't want to mess it up. But most of us think we need to have a certain thing or set of things, more money, love, time, experience, etc., so that we can finally do something important, pursue our passion, start a business, go on vacation, create a relationship, buy a house, etc., which will then allow us to be what we truly want in life: peaceful, fulfilled, inspired, generous, in love, etc. In actuality, it works the other way around. First, we be what we want: peaceful, loving, inspired, abundant, successful. Then we start doing things from that state of being, that state of mind, and soon we discover that what we're doing winds up bringing the things we've always wanted to have. I want that to sink in for a second because I'm going to read it again because I think it's so important and it's so game-changing. First, we be what we want: peaceful, loving, inspired, abundant, successful. Then we start doing things from that state of being, and soon we discover that what we're doing winds up bringing us the things we've always wanted to have. So another way of asking this question is simply, what kind of person would have access to these kind of outcomes? I'm going to take a moment. And how does this land for you guys? Is this like crazy to you? Do you like it? Does it feel scary? Can you throw some things in the chat box? Because it's a very different way of looking at life. Thanks, Lynette. Cool. You know, I freaking love this group, Lisa and Dustin. They are just so, our clear head, strong mind peeps. They're so enlightened. I love them so much. Awesome. Okay. So you guys are fully on board with it. Amazing. So another question for you, because, you know, I believe in us like all being in this together. Why do you think this way of looking at life is important? Just go ahead and throw a few things in there. Why is this important? Why is it important to be the change that you want to have? Yeah, it is scary, Alicia. It's really scary. I'm with you. Yeah. It's a domino effect. Power of intention. Internal before external. Oh, you guys. So smart. Oh my gosh, Amy. Can we just read Amy's out loud? Because no one else will have as much passion to change as you do. 100%. So these are so phenomenal. Thank you guys for sharing them. I think everything that you've put out there is 100% bang on. I'm just going to add one more thing in there. And that is really around when we are living into the future, because that is straight up what we're going to be talking about today. We are talking about how you live now as if you're in the future, how you show up today in the future state. That's essentially what the Be.Do.Have model is all about. And the reason why it's really important to do that is because our past, we often bring our past into our present, right? So all of our attitudes, beliefs, all of that kind of thing from our past shapes how we show up in the world today. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm saying is if the past isn't serving you, then there is some baggage that needs to be let go of in order to powerfully move into the future. Past is wonderful lessons. And we're not going to talk about, I'm not going to go down the law of attraction, you know, sort of thing today. But what I'll share with you in law of attraction is that the past and the lessons that we've learned, it's all about contrast. And when we're really clear on contrast in terms of what we don't want, then we can get super clear in what it is that we do. So you can look at the past in terms of like what worked for me well, what will I like to let go of, but then you have to be able to leave that and you have to step into the future in the way of the person you're going to become when that success, happiness, love, like transformational physical body, whatever that looks like for you, you have to show up that way now. Because if you don't, you're going to keep getting the same results you've had thus far. So this is where you kind of need to step out of that box into that uncomfortable place that is change. And change can be challenging because straight up, our brains don't like it. And our brains don't want us to go down that path. So that's another reason why it's really important to really adopt that Be.Do.Have model. It's about really living into the future. And honestly, living into the future, although it's uncomfortable, as Alicia has said, it also can be a lot of fun and really exciting too. So how do you use this formula, right? Like what are the steps in which to look at this formula? I mean, the first one is vision. And so I'm hoping that you guys can start to see these foundational pieces that we're bringing into Clear Head, Strong Mind, and that we're kind of building one platform off another. But vision is really about where it is that you want to go. And so we did a lot about that last webinar. So, you know, please go back and check it out and take a look at it, because that's kind of the starting point of the Be.Do.Have model. You got to kind of know where we're going first. One other thing that I would throw in there is that when you're clear on vision, and vision can be a number of things, right? Professional vision, personal vision, your love life, again, your physical health, hobbies, passions, whatever it is that you really want to have in life. The second thing that I would ask you is just really, really tune into what that would feel like once it's already been accomplished. So what feeling are you experiencing? And remember that feeling is going to be different for all of us, depending on where we are in our professional and personal life. After you've done that, I just want you to create like who that person is. And so my questions can be things like what are their traits, behaviors, beliefs, what kinds of actions, how do they show up in the world? Like, what does this person look like? Like, how do they show up in the world? How do they display that? How do we see that? And if you're not 100% sure, one of the things my coach made me do this, it was super uncomfortable, is just go and ask, right? And so go find people who are already acting within this way. They already have that success. They're acting within a certain way, and ask them, straight up ask them. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip here. instead of doing the whole can I pick your brain thing, what works really well is it's something along the line of, hey, Dustin, I really, really admire your success. I think it's really epic what you've done. And I really aspire to be like that. I find it really inspiring to me personally. Would you consider, could I have maybe 10 or 15 minutes of your time? I just would love to ask you a few questions. Thank you in advance for any consideration that you might have towards this. Keeping in mind, somebody doesn't respond to you and it will happen. It's okay. It's not personal. We just don't know where they are at that stage in life. But the way that we show up and we ask people, the delivery can be really important. But the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because it is a powerful exercise. I hated it. It's effective. My coach actually had me do this, especially when I was looking at professional and where I wanted to go professional. And she's like, well, you better go find a few people that are doing that. You better ask them some questions to find out if it's fit for you. And I have also done it with my clients too. I'm like, go and find out, do the research. If it's important enough to you, then you'll make it happen. So it can just give you some insight into how somebody shows up. So that's the only reason why I'm throwing it out there. If you are not sure what those behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, etc. looks like, if you're not sure, find somebody who actually embodies that today and ask them. So the third step really is like visualizing and taking action. So it's really about just taking a little bit of time. And so when I say this, like even when we're doing like future state visioning work, it doesn't always come immediately. Like it doesn't just show up. Sometimes we just have to like be with it a little bit, right? And so I just want you to like take a look at that vision, think about it. You're sort of out there, you're like, okay, here's what it would look like, say in a year from now, 5 years from now. I know 5 years can feel really long, so that's cool. You do whatever feels good for you. And then you want to sort of picture what your life looks like in that moment. And the question is like, what do you see, right? And so like, how are you thinking? Who are you spending time with? What kind of conversations are you having? What decisions are you making? How do you dress? What is your relationship with money? How do you walk when you enter or exit a room, right? And so these are just some questions to get you going, but think about it, right? Like think about, here's where I am. This is the kinds of things that I'm doing. This is the way that I'm showing up. This is the way in which I'm acting. This can be really powerful, especially professionally. I did this when I was looking to get those promotions in corporate. I showed up like the leader that needed to be in that role that moment. That's how I showed up. So you can do that in a number of ways. You can do that from a relationship perspective, however it is that works for you. Just want you to think about the end state in the perfect world, what that would look like. It's happened. It's come to fruition. So how do you show up? What is happening with you at that moment? Because that's what you're going to drill down to into how you're going to start showing up today. Am I making sense? Thumbs up. Something. Okay, cool. All right. So here's sort of like another quick little analogy. And for the men on the call, I'm sorry, because I'm going to do, the female version here, but it's like, and I just loved this. So I wrote it down because I wanted to share.
Hold on for a real quick minute, if you could. I got another.
So it's how basically you live from your future. And so this is what I mean for the men. This doesn't necessarily apply to you. We can turn the preposition around. But you think like her, you feel like her, you dress like her, you eat like her, you show up like her, you go to the places that she would go to. So you can turn that into, the masculine version as well. So what does that person do? How do they show up? How do they basically, what is it that they're being? All right. Any questions about this so far? I know it can feel sort of like vague, airy-fairy, pie in the sky kind of stuff. And I want to know if it's landing for you. Yeah, okay. We can do Q&A after. So how does this relate to personal branding? Now, I do have a couple of definitions here. Again, I'm going to read them because I want to get them right. But a personal brand is rooted in the minds of people in the market. Personal branding is the effort to communicate and present your value to the world, right? A true personal brand revolves around what other people say about you. Personal branding revolves around what you say about yourself. So why am I bringing up personal branding in the Be.Do.Have model? Because I think it straight up all matters. And so when we look at this, we talked about vision, right? So we're really clear on where it is that we want to go. And then we got to figure out the person we need to become in order to intentionally bring that future to us so much faster. And then there's the way in which we show up that actually the world starts to see. Ideally, we want that all to be congruent. And when we talk about personal brand isn't about curated imaging. That's not what it's about. Personal brand is authenticity. And if it isn't about authenticity, we actually can't maintain it anyway. And so what I'm offering you is the fact that all of these things actually work together. And so there's intention, there's showing up as that person. It's the way that you now show up and how you are displayed out into the world. Does that make sense? So I just want you to be cognizant of that as you start to go through some of these exercises. And so, you know, as we begin to wrap some of this up, that is some of the questions that I'd really like you to hone in on and take away from this call. And that is, if there's anything about these calls that is insightful in any way, maybe there's an aha moment, and I hope that there is. And if there's not, that's okay. Take it away and think about it and see if something comes up a little bit later. But it's really around taking what we hear as a concept or a thought or a different idea, being with it, but then also putting it into practice, because the putting it into practice is actually what changes everything. And in the absence of putting something into practice, then what happens is we essentially were inspired for about an hour, and then we're going to go have a cocktail after all of this and forget that any of this has actually even occurred to begin with. And so vision, we start there. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It simply is about what would it look like. And it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen. Evidently, shit happens in the world, right? Evidently. So, but it's really about, and there was some profanity, I might get in trouble with that because I know it's being recorded, but evidently it happens. And so at the end of the day, we still have the opportunity to intentionally choose our future. It still can be a choice, and we will hit it a lot more closer if we're intentional about where it is that we want to go. And then we have the pleasure of actually becoming that person today. We actually have the pleasure of becoming that person today. And if we can push past some of the uncomfort level and some of that imposter syndrome that comes up, we can get through to the other side. A lot of magic's going to happen. And then we get to decide, how do we want to show up in the world, right? Like, how do we want people to see us in the world? And how can this all be congruent and authentic to ourselves? Now, when we talk about mindset, which is what we talk about a lot, obviously with clear head, strong mind, like, it's simple. A lot of this is really simple stuff. But like I said before, it's not necessarily easy. And the challenge is, I think, when we're talking about anything that's mindset driven, is simply the fact that we don't have physical evidence. And so when we take a look at like transformational change within our body, we can actually see that, right? We can see that change. It's really hard to open up our skulls and take a look at our brain to see if our brain is growing. I don't recommend doing that, by the way. So the point is that your brain is like a muscle. It's just like everything else, within your body. It can grow too. And I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm not going to pretend to be that. But what I can share with you is that this is all founded in research and science, and there are neural pathways in our brain that can shift and change over time. And so we all have the ability to shift our mindset. We all have the ability to do that. We just have to get really clear and intentional, and then we show up from a committed and dedicated and consistent way, and just have faith that it's going to happen in the absence of physical evidence. But when it does, it's super powerful. And that is simply a choice. It's just simply a choice. So that is it for me on the Be.Do.Have model. I friggin' dig this one. Like, I love the Be.Do.Have model. I hope you guys do too. It's scary, but it's also a lot of fun when you start to craft this out. So I'm going to leave the webinar at this point right now, but we're going to turn it over to any comment. I mean, I love this group, and I think you're all so epic and smart and enlightened and all of those things. So, feel free to share comments or ask questions, and, let's have a bit of a conversation around it.
So Angela, I'll kick off with one. So how do you find that clear vision in a time when everything is just so unclear? When you don't know what next week is going to look like, and everything is in a bit of chaos in your professional life, which always comes through your personal life. What are some tips on getting yourself centered into what that clear vision really should look like?
Yeah. So vision is typically, I get it. Just so you guys know, I feel the same way, right? Like it's, I know a lot about this stuff. Again, doesn't necessarily make it easy. Um, I think the key with vision is that it is meant to be long term. And so if we look at vision from like a month from now, that might be what's kind of getting in our way a little bit because we don't know what next month is going to look like. We don't know what the next 3 to 4 to 5 months is going to look like. And so that's where that vagueness and that overwhelm can come into play. Vision actually is intended to be long term. And so the reality is, this isn't going to go on forever, you guys. It just isn't, right? We are going to move into recovery. Things are going to look different on the other side. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like now. But, I'm going to throw Pat McGannon under the bus here for a little bit. Patty, I love you, so it's a good thing. But like when you take a look at Pat, like Pat's vision isn't necessarily going to change, right? Like Pat is a brilliant musician. He owns a company that brings like epic entertainment experiences so people can, be in this live experience through music, right? And so that hasn't changed. It might, maybe it has, Pat. Maybe you've decided to go down a whole new career path. Like I actually don't know. So shouldn't put you on the spot there.
No, I'm going to keep, I'm in music for life.
There you go. So the point I'm trying to make is the vision is still the long term. The strategy is going to change, and the shift is the how, right? That's where the shift and pivot happens. Now, some of you might choose to change your vision altogether. That's okay. It's your life. You get to decide what you want your life to look like, and nobody else gets a say in that. Maybe a spouse or a family. Let me take that back. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that you can choose what that vision looks like. So I would say get out of that minutia right now, if that's what's holding you back. And I don't mean minutia in a negative way, Dustin. I don't mean like, oh, like that financial stuff. Like obviously that stuff is important. I would never, ever come to any of these conversations without empathy. What I'm saying is that if we can look a little bit long term and why it is that we started what we're doing and why it still matters in the world and how we still want to create impact in the world, that could be a great place to start vision and take the pressure off yourself and knowing all of the answers right now, because you won't, and that's okay. You will deal with the answers and the strategy and the shift and the pivots as more information becomes available to you. And that's what strategy is all about. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me, for sure. I'm just seeing if Lynette wants to jump on and ask you her question in person. And while I'm waiting for her to respond or pop up here, Charlene Burnett, another wonderful Canadian friend of ours, has posted a link to a TED Talks on imposter syndrome. And I've watched this TED Talk. So if you can't see it there, I'll just repost it. Everybody should grab this. It's a really wonderful
So Dustin, I'm glad you pointed that out, and I knew you would, but Ange, I had a question around, on behalf of the group, or when you mentioned imposter syndrome, do you have any, like a couple of self-talk, reactions we can say to ourselves when we feel or start to acknowledge that imposter syndrome is playing a role in some of our decision making, or any like little tips or tools we can use to combat imposter syndrome in the moment, or perhaps long term? Either versions of that question?
Yeah, no. And I guess the first thing I want to say about imposter syndrome is there's nobody on this call who has not experienced this. So the first thing to remember about imposter syndrome is that it happens to every single one of us. There is nobody on this call that has not ever experienced it, professionally or personally. And often when we move into something new, that's when it starts to pop up. When we're in like our everyday regular lives and we're kind of rocking and rolling and we're awesome and we're amazing, that's usually not when imposter syndrome hits. Imposter syndrome hits when we're about to stretch. And that's when our limiting beliefs will start to come up and say, don't do that. It's not safe. The brain wants to keep us safe, right? So one of the things that I often will talk about with imposter syndrome is we still want to hang on to the why, right? Because the imposter syndrome is part of the process. We got to go through to get to the other side. So that's why I like harp on the why all the time, because it's a life raft that gets you to the other end. The other thing is I think it's really, it might sound silly, it does work. What I often recommend, and I've actually done this with clients, it's so funny. And I'll be like, tell me about a time when you did something really epic, and what was the process, and what did it look like, and what was the outcome? And I'll be like, tell me about another time. And so what happens is we start to almost create this mini brag book for ourselves. And we're like, oh, yeah, I did. Oh my gosh, I really rocked that. I was really good at that. Oh, and this is what I did. And this is how I overcame it. And yeah, I can totally do that. I've been able to do this before. And if you can, I just think it's best practice to start writing that stuff down. I mean, honestly, it takes 5 or 10, 15 minutes to do a little brag book for yourself. I promise you, you are all worth it. Take the time to do it. And then you can actually go back and take a look at some of your past really amazing successes and how you overcame adversity to get to the other side in a really powerful way. The other thing that I might recommend is talking to somebody that you trust who has your back, right? So a supportive friend, so you can just bounce ideas off. Of course, you can always talk to a coach too, who are trained to help you through imposter syndrome. So, the thing I really want to impart upon all of you guys is that it's normal. It's totally normal. Everybody experiences it.
Awesome. I have Lynette back, so I'm going to get Lynette to ask you her question so she can put it in her own words so I don't botch it. Hi, Lynette.
Hey guys. Yeah, and so just even kind of working off Tara's comment there about, out of kind of discomfort can come incredible growth. How do you suggest someone who, even upon self-reflection, is lacking the kind of insight or self-awareness to figure out what is lacking in their kind of approach to whether it's becoming, a better business person, a better friend, just a better whatever, to activate your doing part so that you can have what you're trying to accomplish. So just kind of some tips for people on how to start those types of conversations.
Okay, so Lynette, I just have one question for you because I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Because we always talk about transformational change starting with self-awareness first, right? So is your question around somebody not having the insight to self-awareness, so therefore they can't kind of get off the gate?
Yeah, perhaps. Or if they've kind of done some self-reflection and they're like, where am I missing the mark here? Like, what am I just not seeing that maybe somebody else is seeing? How do you ask those types of questions, or how do you start that that conversation around that, like what you're kind of not seeing when you're doing your self-reflection?
Okay. Well, first of all, what I'll share with you is that blind spots are blind spots for a reason. So let's not beat ourselves up over blind spots, because if they weren't blind spots, then they wouldn't be blind spots, right? So that's the first thing that I would say to you. So everybody has blind spots. That's why, like, I still have my own coach, because I have all my own blind spots and I am trained in this stuff and I still can't see my own damn blind spot. So it's totally normal. The second thing is that I would probably say, and I don't want to ask you a lot of coaching type questions because we are now in front of 60 people. So I'm not going to do that, but I am willing to have a quick conversation with you after, if this is important to you, and see if we can get to the root of the issue, if it's something personal for you. And if it's not, that's okay too. But in the absence of being able to dive a little bit deeper, I'm going to give you probably a bit more of a bigger answer than I would like to. So within the space of there could be a lack of insight, or maybe you think you've got it figured out, but it's still not working the way that you want it to, then I would still recommend having a conversation with a trusted source. And so I'm going to give you guys a link that'll come out next week. And it's really about almost doing a personal audit on your own personal brand to best understand where the perception of gaps are going to be. But then what I would also recommend is choosing, maybe not one person, maybe 3 to 5 trusted sources, and ask them, this is where I want to go. Here's where I think the challenge is. Is there something I'm missing? Is there something that I'm not seeing, right? And the reason why I say 3 to 5 people is because when I do this with clients as well, I'll often say to them, don't go to one person, because if you get one answer from one person, it's not necessarily the end all be all. Sometimes we need to get a flavor, I guess, of answers to be able to distill that, to see if there is some continuity or some patterns around that. So does that help, Lynette? Okay, cool. And not to put Lynette on the spot, it's just that when we talk about this kind of stuff, we're in a facilitating curriculum type environment. Coaching is very much right into the root and the powerful questions right there. And it's really hard to do that in this environment because there's, confidentiality and all of that kind of stuff attached to it. So yeah, so hopefully that answered your question, Lynette. And if it didn't, just go ahead and ask me again. I might not have gotten it right. Anything else?
I just want to point out Tom Kira's comment here. What am I not seeing is so much better than what should I do?
Great way to phrase that.
Oh my God. Was Tom, was it?
Yeah, Tom.
Oh my gosh, Tom, that's brilliant. Where is Tom? I want to find him now on here.
think he's got his camera off. But
Okay. Well, Tom, thank you. That is brilliant. Thank you for sharing that with
I
everyone.
can't see him, but I promise he's lovely. That's great.
Cool.
Anybody else have anything for Angela? If you have anything after the fact, that's okay too. You can reach out to us and we can make sure you get connected.
Do you want to maybe, Ange, do you want to give us some final thoughts here? And then I invite everyone still to stay on until the end, because we're going to ask you to turn up your volume and just enjoy a beautiful song from one of our friends. But Ange, I think maybe we pass it over to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We can do that. So, I mean, I've already, I think, I hope I've wrapped up the Be.Do.Have model as best as I can on, you know, what it is and why it's important, and some steps to kind of get you going in correlation with that vision, in correlation with that personal brand. I'm going to do a blog post next week, delving a lot more into personal brand. So if you're interested, you can pop over to the website Wednesday of next week and check it out. If you're not, that's okay too. All right with that. But I think really what I want to impart upon everybody is that, you know, like I actually feel like a big hats off to all of you guys. And I think there's a big hats off to the ILEA Board of Governors here, to really allow a coach to come in to talk about some of these sort of mindset driven things. It's not necessarily the norm in a lot of memberships. And so I think there's a lot of kudos to, you know, a Board of Governors that recognizes that this could be of value to its membership. So I really do want to say that. And then the second thing I just want to share with you is that this is foundational. And so as we kind of are rolling these out, one foundation is meant to build off another foundation, build off another foundation, and build off another foundation. And the entire intent and purpose of all of this is to help move you all into recovery from a powerful position and not a place of exhaustion. And also having permission to recognize the pragmatic space that we're all in. Like, we can be pragmatic and be realistic about where we're in, but we also have this beautiful ability to look at the future from a place of possibility and opportunity. And that's really the intent of the Clear Head, Strong Mind as we start to move forward. So the only thing that I would say is that if there's anything about this that felt good for you, great, hang on to that. And after this call, take a few moments, be in it a little bit, and then put it into practice. So answer those questions, schedule it in your calendar. I'm blocking 2 hours to like really kind of look at this Be.Do.Have. And then I'm going to find an accountability partner. I'm going to share that. And so that you can actually see the results of all of these things that we're talking about. So I think, you know, from a wrap up, that's probably what I would have to add. Did we want to talk about next webinar at all, Lisa? I'll leave that with you and Dustin.
Oh, well, I invite you to, do you want to hint drop the next topic?
Yeah. So some of you might be like, oh, great, I'm not coming to this one. But next we're going to talk about energy. And I'm a big believer, you know, time is fixed, energy is variable. I say that all the time. We can't change the fact there's 24 hours in a day. We can change the way our energy fluxes and moves throughout the day. And so we're going to do a lot of work around energy in terms of like foundational pieces. And I got to tell you, there's no performance coach on the planet. You will not find a performance coach on the planet that will not talk about this, because it is so important. And in order to give the world greatness, we have to give that same, you know, generosity and respect to ourselves first. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. I'm going to bring in a lot of really cool scientific research from Yale University, grounded over 20 years, that I think will be really cool for you guys. And then we're actually going to talk about building and creating an energy plan. And I suspect that there's a lot of you right now that have really, really honored this work-life balance, even though it might not have been what you desired by any stretch. It was sort of, you know, imposed upon you. But there is an opportunity, if there's some really good things that are coming out of this time in terms of balance, or an opportunity to look at, you know, life or wellness in a different way, how we can actually keep that going into the future. And so, you know, we started out really with taking a look at the growth and fixed mindset, vision, Be.Do.Have. Now we're going to go into energy, and then we're actually going to end on July 30th with everything you want to know about habits. Bad habits, good habits, changing habits, triggers, systems, goals, all of it. So
awesome. I haven't heard heard that synopsis from you verbally, so I'm like personally really excited about that one. So thank you. Angela, I'm sure I'm saying this on behalf of the entire group. Thank you so much again for bringing all the beautiful empathy and awareness about what it is to be a human on this planet and how to really shift into being our best versions of ourselves. So thank you so much. And on behalf of the Board of Governors and the entire organization, like thank you so much for the partnership. This has been awesome to build together. And so thank you for being here. Again, to all the members, really appreciate and value you so much as part of this community. We can't do any of this. We can't put any of this content out here without you. So big thanks and gratitude to our membership community. I wanted to acknowledge that our friend Carol Dunsmore, if you've been here before, you know that typically an hour ago we would have started with a really beautiful getting centered breathing exercise or a meditation, and Carol wasn't able to join us today because we did shift the time an hour earlier. So not her fault. She sent a note saying she wishes she could be here and will certainly be on the next one, but just wanted to acknowledge our longtime friend Carol. So registration opens next week for the session Angela just shared, which will take place on Thursday, July 16th. So stay tuned and register early, and we look forward to that. On behalf of the Board of Governors, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce one final friend to the mix here today. I encourage you to turn your volume up and enjoy the musical interludes of longtime ILEA friend Justine Terrell. Justine is a Canadian R&B singer, born and raised Calgarian. So in my hometown, she's been nominated for Singer of the Year, Artist of the Year by the Obsidian Awards, and is the proud official anthem singer for the Calgary Stampeders, which is our Canadian Football League team here in Calgary, Alberta. So we invited our friend Justine to come and sing one song for us. So we are certainly going to end before the top of the hour. Justine, thank you for being here. I know you're singing a song for us with your partner that I think speaks to the times. So I invite all of you to sit back and take the next 5 minutes to just enjoy being here. So Justine, if you've got your volume on, and maybe everybody, if you want, put it on speaker view so you really can see and enjoy Justine. And Justine, wherever you are, it's over to you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Everyone can hear me?
Yeah, I would maybe bring your volume up just a little bit so we can hear you a bit louder if you've got some.
Even bring it closer.
Yeah.
Is this good?
It's a bit quiet. I don't know if you have. We're all just going to produce this live together, right? Because why not?
On here, bear with me.
I know several people on the call know Justine. I'll just ramble until you're ready. Give me a thumbs up. Pat McGannon, you and I worked with Justine many times last year. Dustin, I know you've certainly danced on the dance floor to Justine before. And Lynette clearly knows you, so yeah, you're certainly well known.
Familiar faces. How's the volume now? Is this
That's great?
Better?
Yeah, that's great. Rock and roll.
Perfect. Okay, let's give this a go. So yeah, as Lisa said, I'm going to do a song that's kind of just on my heart right now with the times. I think it's just a beautiful piece. It's a Bob Marley song, and I'm really excited to sing it for you guys. So here we go. Oh, pirates, yes, there are bikes, all that to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, my hands were made strong by the hand of the Almighty. Forward in this generation, triumphantly. And won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever hate, redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Number we can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long will they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look And some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. And won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever hate, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song.
Ah! I think
Thank you
everyone's
so
automatically on mute, so you're not hearing, but everyone is applauding. You would hear and Dustin's giving you a standing O because he's got a standing desk, so it makes sense.
I so appreciate you guys having me, and shout out to my partner who this morning I was like, listen, I love you, but you're gonna have to learn Redemption song like now. So he's down there waiting.
Oh, cute! No imposter syndrome here, right?
So I mean, I actually
you.
resonated with the imposter syndrome part. I'm like, that is so true. Everyone really does feel that, and I know I've been there too. So it was a treat to also listen. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. That's just when the stars align, right? I know ILEA International, so much of the work that all of us do around the world involves beautiful, talented artists. And if we could just get ourselves kickstarted back into what we had before, then we would bring opportunities with you and for you that put you on stages again. So I look forward to that. On behalf of the organization, thank you for being here. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you guys, why don't we wrap that there? We're giving everyone 9 minutes back in their day. Angela, again, thank you so much for everything you shared with us today. Amy and Dustin, thank you for being here. I saw Karine, another one of our Board of Governors, jump on before. Tara Sweeney, ILEA Canada Chair-elect. Alex, as always, thanks for being here. To all of you, so many amazing names and faces that I think we're all gonna like have to go for a drink at ILEA Live next year, because I feel like we've got our own little community. Maybe we'll do a little half-day Clear Head Strong Mind huddle or something. So yeah, so we'll see you all on July 16th. So watch your inboxes next week to register, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great July 4th.
Bye, everyone. Have a great long weekend.
July 4th.
Bye guys, take care.